In June, the citizens of the European Union are going to elect a new European Parliament in free and fair elections all over Europe. Although this sounds very democratic, many scholars of political science argue that Europe is suffering from a so-called democratic deficit and thus a lack of legitimacy. But what exactly is missing in the EU? Student Forum Maastricht organized a conference dealing with this topic.
There's no consensus whether there is now a democratic deficit or not, and we thought it might be interesting to have it as a topic and discuss with people from other countries.
In general, there are two different perspectives on the democratic deficit, as Jonathan White explains.
Well, democratic deficit is a term which is used quite differently by different people, some with a very institutional focus, some with a focus more on beliefs about politics and what politics can achieve.
Grant Lawrence, a former EU official, argues that there is no democratic deficit regarding the institutional structure of the EU.
The European Parliament is directly elected. The Council of Ministers is represented by represents the governments of the member states of the Union, and the European Commission is nominated by the Council of Ministers and responsible before the European Parliament. So, in that sense, they are democratic institutions.
In contrast to that, many people think that democracy goes beyond the institutional setting of the EU.
There is a democratic deficit because we feel that people lost grips on Europe, on European decision making. It's about our financial crisis, it's about environment, and if people won't be part of decision making, then the legitimacy of Europe is at stake.
But how can the EU become more democratic?
Most important point in our view is that people should learn to see Europe in a from a trans-European position. Not only looking to Europe from a national perspective, because you have to see that our national politicians are making Europe more and more important, but neglecting the people in Europe to take them part into the decision making.
It is a responsibility of the voters to learn and to follow the affairs and to push their governments and their local and national representatives in national and European parliaments to deal with the issues more. Of course, as a journalist, I should also say that the media has a primary responsibility of informing the people, and it's not always doing a great job because a lot of the issues that get reported in the media are very much national focused.
The Lisbon Treaty, once it is ratified, will reform the institutional structure of the EU. However, it remains contested whether it can bridge the gap between Europe and its citizens.
Certain elements of the Lisbon Treaty which would improve things. It would, for example, have introduced a greater role for the national parliaments, and it would have introduced a more efficient system of governance in the Council. But I think more than anything else, we must think in terms of how we explain what goes on in the European Union, how we explain to the citizens how decisions are taken, and how they can influence decisions as citizens, who they should go and see, who they should speak to, and above all, who they should vote for.
One thing seems to be clear. The problem of democratic deficit can't be solved overnight. Besides institutions that allow for effective participation, Europe certainly also needs more European-minded citizens. Here, education plays an important role.
One of the things that I would encourage is a greater emphasis within the educational systems of the member states of the European Union of European affairs. But I would also say that each individual citizen should try, for example, learn another language. And it enables you to read other newspapers, watch other televisions or listen to other radios, and to hear what the other people are thinking. And then you begin to realize that there are different points of view, and from that I think you can start to communicate more clearly.